then began working full-time for Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche by working on various FPMT projects. She served as editorial director of Wisdom Publications, editor of Mandala Magazine, executive director of Liberation Prison Project, and as a touring teacher of Buddhism. She travels to Nepal to do annual pilgrimages. And if anyone's interested in more information about her, documentary Chasing Buddha, you can watch her teachings on YouTube, and all this information is on her website at robinacorton.com. We will break for lunch at 12:30 today for an hour. This will be a great time to discuss the teachings. And I also invite you all to stay after class this afternoon as we are recruiting new volunteers to assist with our new upcoming...
No, we are going to present a magnificent new plan for the wonderful centre so that you'll just die to come. You're not recruiting anybody. You're not recruiting anybody. You have to write your scripts thing. You don't ask anybody for anything. You're going to offer a beautiful centre with lots of programs. So people will just love to come with it. It's different, I see.
Thank you.
Isn't it?
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, let's see if we've got this done. Okay, there's another new one, third new one.
The other one last time it wasn't. We only fixed the modem.
Oh, I see, okay. Okay, I think it's okay. There we go.
I'm just watching for people to come in to help
Okay.
the cash
All right.
for a few minutes.
Okay. So is that amplified or not?
No.
Not yet. Not amplified.
It was turned off.
Is it amplifying now?
Yes.
Okie doke. Okay. I'll do this. Here. No, that's no good.
Do you want it behind you?
No, I'm not sure. We'll see. That's okay. Stick it in there. Okay, that's good. I think yes. Okay. Okay. What's the title say again? I heard. I'm not. A second. What was the title?
Change your mind, change your reality.
Today's. Or just. Okay. Okay. It's really a continuation of what we've been talking about, isn't it? Who's here today whom I haven't met? Whom I haven't met? I thought I hadn't met you. I know you from before, don't I? No, I don't. Hold on, people. Everybody else I know, do I? Okay. Good. Okay. So as usual, I have to start with just a little what's called a prayer. But I sometimes joke and say, don't get all holy just because it's called a prayer. All it's doing is stating some thoughts, really. Because prayer are words, aren't they? And then they come from thoughts. So these thoughts, and the thoughts, the mind is Buddha's expertise, which we're going to talk about, you know. So these thoughts are really just sort of, it's two bits. The first two lines of this little prayer, I'll sing in Tibetan, are for those of us in the room who already identify with being a Buddhist. And it's kind of saying, it's reminding us of our reliance on the Buddha, his teachings, blah, 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 you know. And the second two lines, it can be for all of us, stating, really, we'd say, stating our purpose. Why are we here together today, this morning, both parts, whatever. The Tibetans would say, setting our motivation. So just stating our purpose. So we think we're here to listen, including me, to these ideas, Buddha's views about the mind, life, happiness, suffering, these things. And we're listening for tools, that's the point. It's got to be practical. It's got to be something you take with you, even if it's 1%. I joke and I mean it sincerely, you can be a 1% Buddhist. You can take 1% if it works for you and you use it in your life. It should be practical. So these tools that should help us do what? Well, this is the essence of the Buddhist approach, which we'll talk more about. The Buddhist view is we've got this extraordinary potential. And putting it in very simple terms, potential to be less neurotic, less fearful, less depressed, less jealous, less angry, more kind, more wise, more confident, more content. Quite literally, that's the bottom line. That's the purpose of taking on board in your life Buddhist techniques. But it's for our sake, that's clear, but also because we live in this world together, it's for the sake of others. A bird needs two wings, they say, wisdom and compassion. Put ourselves together, then we can be useful to others. So the prayers of expressing this idea. Sangye chadam soke chakramla jamchu baru dagi kyam suchi dagi chönyen gipe sonam ki drola peche sangye drupa shok sangye chadam soke chakramla jamchu baru dagi kyam suchi dagi chönyen gipe sonam ki drola peche sangye drupa shok sangye chadam soke chuknabla, jacho baru dagi kyapsuchi, dagi chönyen ki pasonam ki, drola peche sangye drupa sho. Okay. Excuse me for a second. So, in a way, this is really just continuing, or reiterating what we've been talking about so far, or this week. So the thing is, if you've heard this 1,000 times or never before, it's really helpful. And even though I speak it all the time, this is my job, it's important that you hear it freshly. It's a bit like, if you heard a piece of beautiful music, you would never say, oh, I've heard it already, give me something else. That every time you listen to it, it goes more deep, you get more from it. This is reasonable. Well, that's what learning something is. You don't just hear it for the first time. You've got to keep hearing. And every time you hear, it should go a bit deeper. The meaning of it goes deeper. And that's why for me, I never get bored talking about it. It's my job. I do this all the time. But I never get bored. Because every time I hear it, and I mean it sincerely, when I'm speaking it, I'm kind of listening. And every time I hear it myself, I get a new aspect of it. Then it's not just intellectual, and that's really important. So, this analogy, I like it a lot. A bird needs two wings. This is a way of actually framing all of Buddha's teachings, all of Buddha's techniques, all of Buddha's methods, all of Buddha's meditation, philosophy, psychology, you name it, from A to Z. And this is a bird needs two wings, wisdom and compassion. So we've been talking during the week, the nuts and bolts of Buddhist view of the world, and we know the words karma, everybody hears about that word, this concept of reincarnation, and the way the mind works, Buddhist psychology. That's sometimes, even though we know mindfulness, and people talk about mindfulness, that's a very superficial understanding of the mind. Buddha's got a very sophisticated, very deeply described, kind of intricate view of the way the human mind works. It's kind of fascinating. And like I said during the week, this is just, even before, it was before the Buddha, more than 3,000 more years ago, this worldview was already existing to some degree among the Indians, and then the Buddha came from that tradition and then diverged in his own direction, and since then we've got Buddhism, and then now we know, especially this last, I'd say since the Tibetans came into exile into India, and then in the 70s, late 60s and early 70s, all the hippies from the West started looking for liberation and drugs at the same time. I don't ever know why we thought liberation came with drugs. Don't ask me. It's completely weird why that, but for some reason. So all these Westerners, the hippies, went to the East, And because I think it's very funny because Tibetans, they, the traditional way Tibetans used to dress, some still do. The men wear long dresses. They have these very bright coloured clothes. They wear these big coral earrings. They have long hair. So we thought, oh wow, they're hippies. Look at them. But if Tibetans were dressing in a modern way, they're the most conservative people you'd ever find. It's astonishing. They all wear shirts and ties and gloves and handbags, and high heels. Totally traditional, very conservative people. But for some reason, idiot Westerners, we thought they were hippies. And some of them were shocked by all the kind of culture of the hippies and the drugs and everything. But for some reason, it seemed to come with enlightenment. Very weird. Anyway. Why did I say that? God knows why I said that. I forget. I let myself off track. I'm sorry. That's right, exactly. So Buddhism now, we can see, since maybe 60 years, since that time, 60 years, really kind of relatively popular in many of modern countries. Australia, really popular. I think per head of population, way more Buddhist centres in Australia now, say, for example, New Zealand, here, Europe. It's very interesting how it's come, just the last 50, 60 years, become so popular. So, then, so the essence of this wisdom wing, if you like, is what we've talked about all week. It's this understanding about karma. This is Buddha's worldview. As we've been talking, it's a very different view from the materialist view, and even too, there's some similarities in, you'd say, with Christian teachings and Muslim teachings in terms of behaving nicely, being a good person. That's shared by everybody. I mean, good communists behave the same as a good Catholic, just when we open our mouths and the philosophy is different. But being a nice human being, that's common sense. That's shared by all humans. But the views of the world and where it comes from and what it is and what has happened and what is suffering and how you get it, that's where the differences are. So the Buddhist ones are quite radically different in many ways. And especially, particularly in this view of both the way the mind works, Buddhist psychology is very extensively dealt with in all the literature, and this concept of karma, reincarnation. It's not, like I joke and say, it isn't just something made up by the hippies in the 60s. It's a vast worldview that's been around for thousands of years, actually, before Buddha came along, even. So it's if you're a Tibetan Buddhist, it's a crucial part of the way you would study the Buddhist view, and it becomes one of your crucial tools. Initially, it might seem like, thinking about reincarnation, how can that help you in your daily life? But it's got great meaning. The implications of it are very tasty. So that's one part, the karmic idea. We're going to go into that today for sure. And then also the way the mind works. And these two come together completely. Understanding the way the mind works, understanding the neurotic parts of our mind, understanding the virtuous, positive parts of our mind, and learning how to grow our mind, learning how to develop it, learning how to become this marvelous person, which is the Buddhist idea. This is really the job of being a Buddhist, and the idea of karma comes into that very strongly. So I'll try and present all that to try and show how you use that as tools in your daily life. But the thing, and then you've got the compassion wing. We maybe started on that, I can't remember. We started talking about equanimity, didn't I? Did I mention that? I didn't yet. Okay, I did. Right?
You didn't use the word.
Okay, then I haven't talked about it then. That means I haven't talked about it. So we'll go into the compassion wing a bit as well, where it's more, so the first part is more focused on putting yourself together. Because how can you be useful to others if you can't put yourself together? You can't even help a dog if you're hopeless, if you're miserable, depressed, angry, jealous. You can't help anybody. All you do is make a mess of yourself and others. So clearly the wisdom wing is where you sort of put yourself together to some degree, and then to that degree you open your eyes and go, wow, we're all in the same boat here, we're all crazy. How can I help others? So it's fairly logical. The compassion wing comes second, really. It's a more advanced level. But as the Dalai Lama puts, compassion's not enough. You've got to have wisdom. And I'll explain what that means, So this is the entire path from A to Z. If you want to become the whole Buddhist path, all of it's included in these two wings of the bird, if you like. So it's just a reminder. The essence of it, the point of being a Buddhist in the long term is expressed beautifully by this word, Buddha, the meaning of it, and particularly the Tibetan word, the Tibetan equivalent, as I mentioned, Sangye. The etymology is so delicious. Sang, the taste of that word is that it implies the total eradication. And hear these words carefully, because this is not how we think in our modern psychology. It sounds the weirdest thing you've ever heard. The Buddhist view is that we can completely rid the mind, rid our being of all neuroses, all fear, all ego, all depression, all anxiety. These words are simple, but listen to the meaning. That's shocking. You ask your therapist for methods to get rid of all fears, all ego forever, I think you're mentally ill. Give you a bunch of pills to calm you down. But this is literally the Buddhist view. And then the second syllable, Sangye, Buddha, Buddha's Sanskrit, is that the Gye implies the development to perfection of all the other stuff inside us. Love, intelligence, kindness, compassion. It's not complicated. These words are not complicated. This is the goal, the result of practicing Buddhism. And of course Buddha would say it takes several lifetimes. That's what he would say. Sangye, that's the potential of every one of us. So then the other thing to really distress, and I mentioned this quite a bit during the week, but I want to say it here too to remind us, is where does this information come from? And that's I remember I said, I told you that I've only ever had one question once. Everywhere else in the world we ask the same questions. Every one of us, I promise you. But there's only one time one person's ever asked me this one question. It was a scientist in New Zealand, and he said, who revealed the teachings to the Buddha? And that's a perfect question when you have the concept of religion, which is the usual one of a creator. And this is the massive difference in Buddhism. And it's not just this intellectual difference. The implications of it experientially are quite profound. Like I was a Catholic. Naturally, I had faith in God. God, who was God? God is necessarily a creator, superior being who exists beyond everybody else and creates everybody and everything and the rules. This is natural. This is the Muslims, the Jews, the Christians. And that's our view of what we think religion is, isn't it? We just default mode. Oh, you believe in, oh, you're religious, are you, Robina? You believe in God? No. Surprise, shock to us. So then, who is Buddha? Where did he get it from? When I told this scientist, like I mentioned, he didn't get it from anybody. He came from his own, he came up to it, he came to his own conclusions from observing his own mind and the universe. The Buddhism, I said, he's like Einstein, whose knowledge, we know, he presents his findings. It's his findings about reality. That's what this is. Buddhism, every word you're hearing in this room is from Buddha's findings, his own direct personal findings, not from revelation. Therefore, not technically something you must believe in. Because when we say believe, we mean can't prove. You believe in it. You never say you believe in mathematics, you'd be laughed at. You never say you believe in botany, you'd be laughed at. You prove it. Well, that's the same Buddhist view. It might take time to prove relativity, many, many, many years, but it's something that somebody else has proved, and there's all his methodology. Buddha's the same. Here's my methodology. This is what I've come to the conclusion. This is what I've become myself. Here's how you can do it yourself. That's the essence of it. So, okay, that implies the way to listen to the advice. To listen to the advice. It's something that you want to take on board, to experience for yourself, thus to verify yourself. Clearly it takes time. You've got to verify 1 + 1 is 2 before you get anywhere near relativity. You've got to go one step at a time. It's exactly the same approach. But this takes a while to hear, because you're going to ask, we always use the word belief. Oh, you mean to be a Buddhist, I've got to believe in karma? We talk like that. I purposely never use that word, purposely. And I say, Buddhism is my working hypothesis. Which means you just don't leave it in a book. You're attempting every little moment, each piece of it, to verify for yourself, to experience for yourself, to get clear in yourself. That's why I say I never get bored talking about it, because I'm trying to practice it. You know? If I weren't, I'd be a phony. You should chuck me out the door. If I'm giving cooking class here, but I can't make a cake, excuse me, you want your money back. But I'm not saying I'm a perfect cook. I'm not a Buddha yet. But at least if I'm practicing, at least we're all in the same club. You understand? But to actually give recipes and say, oh no, I don't know how to make a cake. You'd be inauthentic. People would laugh at you. So I'm not saying I'm a great practitioner, but if I'm not attempting to, that's being pretty phony, isn't it? It's like you're a good person talking about being moral. What is it? Anyway, I don't want to quote politicians. Don't worry about it. Sorry. Excuse me, I have to blow my nose again. Okay, so change your mind, change your life. We know, we kind of understand, we get that. In a sense, we get it. But actually, the level to which we can change our mind, that's where I say it's Buddha's expertise. Like I'm saying, Sangye, we can get rid of all the rubbish and develop all the goodness to perfection. That's kind of extreme, it's kind of radical. But that is Buddha's findings. So this is the point here, therefore. Let's go more deeply now. We've done a lot of it over the week, but I want to go more deeply now into describing the states of mind. You'll know the words and how they function according to the Buddhist model. You know, we did do it already in the week, but if you haven't heard this before, and if you have, either way, we can hear it freshly. This is the essence of the Buddhist approach. Buddha says, if you can change something, please change it. If you can get your boyfriend to be kind, if you can get your boss to give you a bigger salary, if you can make the weather pleasant instead of unpleasant, if you can change the red light to the green light, please go ahead, Buddha says. You're very welcome, change it. But the idea is, what if you can't? And that's when you have to start practicing, isn't it? If you can get the green light when you want it, if you can get the food you want, you can get the husband to behave beautifully, and why would we want to do that? This is the point, because that's what we think happiness is, getting what we want. Then great, your life will be good. But the practice starts when you can't, because that's when the dramas start. That's when we start killing and lying and stealing and getting depressed and angry, is when we can't change the outside world. And that's really speaking very simply, but it's kind of profound. Because what we mean by happiness, what we mean by suffering. Like I said, one way of framing the whole of all these teachings is in terms of being happy, getting happy and stopping suffering. If you look at the entire world, you look at the behavior of monkeys, ants, humans, we're going to see everybody wants happiness and doesn't want suffering. We're going to see every decision we make and every day. We so take this for granted we don't even discuss it. We so take this for granted we hardly even notice it. But this is one way of framing the Buddha's teachings and the Buddha's practices, is methods to stop suffering and get happiness. To stop suffering and get happiness. And then, that's the wisdom wing. And then, of course, you can help others on the compassion wing, because you've got the methods. It's pretty clear. But it seems on the face of it kind of simple. So if this is what Buddhism, one way of putting what Buddhism is, then we need to understand, then we have to know what he means by happiness or suffering, and what he means by happiness and suffering. And therefore his methods of how to do it. That's the job, you know. And that's why I start to mention during the week, I start to mention this one presentation, I just finished my delicious ginger, honey, milky chai this morning. I have to drink it. I gave up coffee a few years ago, so you've got to have a try. You used to have a triple cafe latte, and that's kind of got a hit, hasn't it? And it's really hard to have a plain old boring cup of boring old peppermint tea or boring old tea with one black tea bag in it. You've got to give it some guts, isn't it? So I put the ginger in, masses of ginger, this is Indian style, boil it up, put some cardamom seeds, boil it up, then you put your tea bags, and I put 3 in. That's for 2 cups. Sometimes I put 4, and then you put 4/5 of it to be milk, because I like to be like a latte, right? But I had 2 this week. I only drank 1, so this is my second one. It has got a hit. It's kind of good. You understand, people, don't you? I must say my joints are a lot healthier since I gave up coffee. I was shocked to discover it. People told you that, but you didn't want to know about it. But then I discovered it by accident. It was really quite shocking. My joints are a lot healthier since I gave up coffee. I don't want to depress you or anything. Do you understand? Okay, so happiness and suffering. The Buddha's basically saying, based off of this Sangha, this word, yes, people, you can get happy and you can stop suffering. That's essentially what he's saying. That's exactly what he's found, he says himself. That that's our natural potential. And where that potential exists in what he calls the mind. So this we have to get clear. We've got to get it clear. Because when we say mind, we mean this thing up here in the head, in our skull, isn't it? The brain. He doesn't mean the brain. You ask these amazing dudes back there, these great meditators, well before the Buddha, who, as the Dalai Lama said, were the ones who began the investigation into the nature of self, who were the ones who developed this extraordinary skill known as single-pointed concentration meditation, which mindfulness is vaguely based on, but the world knows now. You ask those dudes back then where their brain was, they would not have a clue. But they know their mind. They map the mind internally. So here we're discussing the mind in Buddha's view. Meaning, the Buddhists would say meaning, it's not a function of your brain. If you're a neuroscientist, you're going to walk out the door and think these maniacs in here, totally laughing hysterically. Because by definition for us, the brain is the mind. That's the entire materialist model. But it's not just, but this is why it's marvellous, these last 30 plus years, the Dalai Lama, meeting with the best brains in the West, having these extraordinary conversations, all of which have been published, by this organisation called Mind and Life. Amazing findings now in the West about neuroplasticity, for example, because of all these discussions. And these wonderful open-minded scientists prepared to listen to geniuses like the Dalai Lama and learn things they never knew existed before, this extraordinary Buddhist model, based on these Indians 3,000 years ago. The findings about the mental consciousness. Tibetan's point here, consciousness. Mind, consciousness, these words are used synonymously in Buddhism. Not physical. Not a function of the brain. The way I like to put it, and this is not insulting people who are neuroscientists, please. The way I like to say it, using the Buddhist approach, that the brain at the grosser level of consciousness, because Buddha would suggest we have much subtler levels, which I'll talk about, that the brain is like the indicator of what's happening in the consciousness, like the indicator of what's happening in the consciousness. It's a good way of putting it. So that's actually the gross level. So the Buddhist view would say consciousness is not physical, number 1. Number 2, it's not a function of the brain, 2. 3, it's got we've got the grosser, in the Vajrayana model, the more sophisticated Buddhist teachings, the more advanced Buddhist teachings, they talk about we've got gross level of mind or consciousness, which is day-to-day, thoughts, feelings, emotions, unconscious, subconscious, that we can access to the degree that we can access it. Second, we've got subtle consciousness. And the only time we touch that is when we dream, and for most of us, we have no control. But the great meditators can access that when they've got what they call single-pointed concentration. And that's a key Buddhist technique which we have to develop in the long term to do the job. We have to. to become a Sangha. You've got to learn these skills. And there are people right now, for centuries, from the years before the Buddha up to now, still in retreat doing this technique. It's an astonishing technique called single point of concentration, which hones the mind to a degree of clarity and subtlety and capability that does not exist in a materialist world. That's why we think it's cosmic, you know, we think it's mystical, but it's not. We've got gross consciousness, we have this subtle consciousness, and then we have even what they call very subtle consciousness, the subtlest level. It's a very different view of mind, very, very different. Like I said, if you saw a person who'd accomplished this technique called single point of concentration, they'd look like they were dead, because they've gone beyond the grosser level. So clearly in our model, in the materialist world, that's just cosmic, because we don't posit anything more subtle. So there's a very different view about the mind. And again, this is something that's been around for thousands of years, but not within our Judeo-Christian culture. We don't know anything about this because it comes from India. Like I say, we love the Greeks, isn't it? We know all about the Greeks. Half our fancy words are in Greek. This is from India. It's very interesting. So this mind of ours is not physical. It goes to these much more subtle levels, which we in the long term must access. Most of us in this life, unless we, really go seriously into practice, won't access this. But it's there in theory. The mind goes to a more subtle level. The other one that's radically different and which is really taught about in the teachings about karma and reincarnation, which we're going to discuss because this is a crucial component of the Buddhist approach to life. But keep remembering, because Buddha's not a creator, he doesn't assert a creator. And I say this repeatedly because we have to remind ourselves. This information is not from on high. This information is not to be merely believed. This information is the experience of the person called Buddha and anybody else who has become a Buddha since then, who's used his methodology. This is from experience. So therefore this is not, you can listen to this, take it as your hypothesis. You don't have to swallow it whole, That's just not possible anyway. It's naive to think you have to do that. It's bizarre. So we're all intelligent girls and boys. We can hear ideas we've never heard before, or maybe we don't like. It's okay. Leave it on the back burner if you don't like it. Don't worry about it. So the mind is not physical, not a function of your brain. It goes to far more subtle levels. It has astonishing capacity with this concentration technique to become really subtle, really honed, really skillful, really powerful, which we need to develop in the long term. The other thing that's radically different, which is getting to the point of karma and everything now, from the materialist view, but also from the creative religions view. In each of those cases, they share one point. You began in your mummy's womb. God put a soul there at the time of conception. Actually, the Jews and the Israelis, lots of Israelis are Buddhists now. It's very interesting. But they told me that God puts the soul there soon, only a few weeks, I think, before you get born. Which is why for them abortion is not considered to be killing a human, because you're not properly a human until God puts you the breath of life or something they say. Which is a very interesting concept. Christians, I think the soul begins at conception, doesn't it? Do people know?
Yeah.
That's true, isn't it? You become a human from the certain, because God puts the soul there. But huh?
Sorry.
What?
I was just thinking about the posters that
The poster?
Yeah, the posters, they say the heart starts beating at conception. It's like when for Hawthorne.
I'm a bit confused. What do you think?
There's anti-abortion posters.
So what do they say?
They say the heart starts beating at conception, and they have pictures of me.
So why is it interesting?
At conception, that life begins at conception.
So you're just pointing that out, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because Buddhists would agree, but not to do a soul. Buddhists would agree that the first second of conception is when you begin, but the Christian teaching is God puts a soul there, which is why you become a human. The materialist view is you just become a human because mummy and daddy's egg and sperm came together, isn't it? Well, the Buddhist view is like a third view, if you like. Well, probably the other views, but this is the Buddhist view. And this is a crucial point to get the bigger picture in Buddhism. That your consciousness came from before. It's already existing before. And it's dealt with in great depth in the literature. We're going to go into this. And that you come programmed into your mother's womb, or your mother's fallopian tube, and where you and your consciousness joins the egg and sperm. So in other words, the Buddhist view is really clear. We are not the handiwork of anybody else. Mummy and Daddy give us a brain, a body. Thank you, Mum and Dad. But they do not give me my mind. They don't give me anger, love, compassion, kindness, being good at football, being good at music. These are components of my own consciousness, my own being, and they come from my past practice. That's the major point in Buddhism. It's radically, radically different. So it might take a while for us to get used to. We haven't heard it before. But if you're a Buddhist, you know, like I said, you can be a 1% Buddhist. Many Buddhists I know never think about karma. I think it's completely boring. They're mainly into the one of using the meditation technique and looking at your mind now. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. You can choose what you like. You know, you're the boss. But I like the big picture. So we're going to hear the big picture. And for me, the key point, even if we don't go into karma much, which we will do, because it's a crucial one about change your mind, change your life, is that the experiential implication of this point is pretty testing. You know, because right now, isn't it? We say it. I didn't ask to get born. We say it like a joke. We mean it literally, don't we? I mean, it's true. My mother, I don't remember her consulting me. Can I make you bring Robina? I mean, it sounds absurd, isn't it? And with respect to God, God did not consult me. God decided to make me. Not for the Buddha, neither of these. Well, not the handiwork of anybody else. And as the Dalai Lama likes to call karma, it's self-creation, which is sort of cute, you know, but it's like literally true. We began discussing it, what day? Thursday. We'll go into more detail now. The implication is, therefore, I come into this life programmed from the first second of conception with my qualities, with my anger, my kindness, my love, my psychosis, whether you're Hitler or Mother Teresa. And this is a very powerful point, you know. And the implication of this is, it's mine, therefore I can change it. Because if we can spend the whole day really looking deeply into the implications of this view that we hold deep in our bones that we are the handiwork of Mummy and Daddy. Why do you think we all blame our mother? We blame the parents. Because that's logically where you go back to. This is logical why we would blame our parents. It's logical. You would blame your parents. They created you. It's logical. So almost like, I always joke and say, when your therapist says you've got to start growing up and stop blaming your mother, I disagree. I'm really serious here. If she really did make you, and that is the materialist view, the philosophical view of our culture, I'm not being critical about it. Well, I am being. I'm debating with it. I'm debating with it. That if my mother and father, two wacky people, with their own problems, their own anger, their own jealousy, their own confusion, decide to make another version of themselves, excuse me, it's rather rude. I mean, at least you'd think you become a really good person before you make a baby. If you think you make a baby, I know it sounds hilarious, but for me it's logical to think this way. But it's the one thing no one ever has to train for. Wackos can give birth, you know. You understand? I mean, it's really quite irresponsible. I mean, look at the rules about even driving a car or even running a nursery. But to have a baby, there's no rules. You just have to have sex. I mean, it is. You think it's quite shocking, isn't it? So the Buddhist view is your mother and father didn't make you, Robina. Relax, baby. You made yourself. It's so tasty. I'm a control freak, you see, I'm a boss. So I love the idea that I made myself. I think it's great, and I'm not joking. The thought of being a victim, which is how ego is the irony of ego. The irony of ego, the way we express it, we're trying to, good morning. Where are you? Who are you? I'm trying to see you. Sorry, I can't get out of my glasses. Good morning. Okay. Put my sunnies out of the way. Okay. So, our consciousness for the Buddha, as far as he's concerned, this is where it now sounds hilarious, is beginningless. Hear the words, please. Beginningless and endless. So if you want to kill yourself, don't bother, because you might just keep going. I'm not being mean, I'm stupid here. I know I crack stupid jokes, you know. As far as Buddha is concerned, you don't get created by anybody, because your own mind is a beginningless and endless continuity of mental moments, the product of the law of cause and effect. And we can again spend hours just on this topic. As soon as I say my mind's beginningless, it sounds hilarious, because you have this feeling, deep feeling in this, isn't it? That somehow I must have begun somewhere. Things begin. There's always but as the Dalai Lama said in all these meetings he has with the scientists, you know, he said one time, Big Bang, no problem. Just not the first Big Bang, that's all. So but we all absolutely want a first moment. You think about this, it's very instinctive. Where did it begin? We ask, where did karma begin? Where did happiness begin? Where did anger begin? And interestingly, our view in the West, if I go to you as one of my therapists, we're going to look back into the past, aren't we? For a needle in a haystack. This is where it happened that Robina began to get angry. This is what happened that caused Robina to begin to get depressed. Because we tend to have an assumption, even though we know we came from mummy's genes and DNA, that's the Western view, that somehow you begin as a blank slate, and then you get produced by events, by mummy, by daddy, and then you look back and you find the cause, and that's why you get angry, that's why you get depressed, that's why you're happy. Very strong concept, isn't it? That the causes, and this is getting to the Buddhist point, our view instinctively, which is reinforced in our materialist philosophical views, is that we get made by somebody else, in this case mum and dad, not a creator, and then we track when we track ourselves back into the past. When I go to my therapist, and the past will be what happened to me yesterday, day before, but way back when we look for that needle in a haystack for what happened with mummy and daddy, what events happened, and then we go back further and we look into mummy, daddy, the genes, then we go back to grandma, grandpa, and back to the monkeys, isn't it? Is that not our philosophy? So we look into, because that's the evolution of us physically, because we are only physical, and that's logical if you state that. But the Buddha says no, his view is not that. Mummy, daddy give me a body, yeah, they might have beaten me up, yes, they might have been kind, events play a role, there's no question. But he makes this added piece, he adds this extra piece, this crucial piece, which is his distinctive difference. He posits that we have a consciousness, a mind, these words are used synonymously, that is not the handiwork of mummy, daddy, is not in fact the handiwork of a superior being, and is not a function of the physical. And it comes from its own past. So Buddha looks back into the past too, but our own past. We look back into mummy daddy's past. So the past is the same concept, but Buddha says we look into our own past. That's all. So we are the creators. Not in the kind of magic wand sense, but in an evolutionary logical sense, that by how we behave, how we think, how we speak, how we act, that's the process of creating ourselves. In just the same way, like I said before, if you practice piano for 10 years, you have produced the pianist. In dependence upon decent music from Bach, a nice piano from Steinway, and a good music teacher. They are the external conditions. Well, the Buddha's view is that mummy and daddy and the external events are the Bach, the Steinway, and the good teacher. But our mind is the one that is the main cause of why I'm happy, why I'm suffering, my own qualities, my goodness, my badness, my psychosis, my being good at football or piano or anything else. And that I am the one, and I get born, I come into this life programmed with these tendencies. So they're my habits from the past, not mummies and daddies. Mummy and daddy might share them. They've got them because they practiced them in the past, and I've got them because I practice in the past. This is the Buddha's idea. So the implication of this is the point. It's mine. Therefore I can change them. Therefore I can do them. Therefore I can fix them. I can observe my mind, which is the job of being a Buddhist. Know your mind well, be your own therapist, as Rabbi Yoshi puts it. To know my mind intimately, based upon this concentration technique, so I can unpack and unravel the contents, based upon understanding Buddha's model of the mind. And then furthermore, also basing upon my past karma, what I brought with me that factors into what I am now, and why things happen to me. All of this is the tools and the techniques that one uses to utilize from Buddhism that enable us to then transform ourselves into this marvelous Sangha. This is the essence of being a Buddhist. This is the essence of the wisdom wing. This is the essence of one's day-to-day practice if one chooses to be a Buddhist. These are the philosophical views underpin the day-to-day practice. And the key point I'm making here, the general broad point is this. And if we analyse it, it makes sense, but we often don't think it. And this is the Buddha's key point. Is that hand? Hang on a minute. This is ridiculous. Let's keep my glasses on. I can't see a thing. Is that a hand?
Yes.
Okay, good. Go. What's your question? Sorry. Yes, honey. Speak to me.
So I have my mind consciousness
Yeah,
that I come into my life with.
that's the way the Buddha says, yeah.
I also have a body,
Yep.
a material body,
Yep,
that is given to me by my parents.
yep.
Okay. So the that which I bring from my consciousness, okay, which is emotions. Let's just say emotion. Let's say
And all your tendencies,
it's
your
like
qualities,
all
your
of them.
personality traits. You're good at being this. You've been good at music or football or love or kindness. Both, not just emotional, but intellectual as well, creative as well. All your qualities, your tendencies.
Let's say I'm an angry person.
Yep.
Very angry.
Yeah. I'm sure you're not.
And we all know it's proven that the anger can affect our physical body.
That's right. Yeah, we can see that, can't we? All of our
So-
emotions do. Yeah.
So, how does that fit in?
I get you. Good point. Thank you. Very good point. Okay. So this is going to get answered when we look more deeply into, like we began in the week of Thursday. I don't know if you're here Thursday, but we began looking into the nuts and bolts of the way karma ripens, how it works. You know. So, okay. Well, let's just do that first, and then that'll gradually come. Okay. That's a really perfect question. Well, the general answer is everything is intricately interdependent. Nothing is sort of, there's nothing, everything's connected to each other, isn't it? It's very clear. Everything connected, isn't it? So you simply, you put it, okay. So, like we discussed Thursday, but I'll say more now. This law of karma, as the Buddha would call it, which, like I said, is a natural law. Keep remembering Buddha's not a creator. You have to keep remembering that concept, because religion for us is coming from a creator, is coming from a superior being, and the core about that is the creator creates things, creates the laws. That's why we have God's law and natural law. But there's no concept equivalent of God's law in the absolute sense. So everything is only natural law. And that's a bit of a shocking concept, but that's the Buddha's point. And all he's telling us is he's observed that this law of karma is a natural law within which that runs in the minds and lives of all sentient beings, and no one runs it. It runs itself. Okay, so then like we talked, we'll go into more detail now, that what's your name?
Jackie.
Jackie. Okay, Jackie. So Jackie is the name we give to this person whose consciousness from the past, known as who know what, not more than a few weeks before your very subtle consciousness hit your mummy's fallopian tube. Okay? This was in a previous body. We go back, this river of mental moments keeps going back and back and back. And the concept of karma is that every millisecond of what Jackie experiences experiences each moment is the fruit of what she's done before. Equally, every millisecond of what Jackie thinks and does and says now is producing the seeds that will produce the future in Jackie's consciousness. So you're experiencing the fruit. So that began in the womb at the first time of conception. And there are four, like I just joke about, 4 bank vaults of seeds, 4 kinds of, there are 4 results of karma, 4 main ways that your past actions ripen in the present. So the first one, the main result of a type of rebirth. So in your case, Jackie, like us, you've got a human body. So that means your consciousness was programmed. This happens at the time of death, not more than a few weeks before you were conceived. One of the main seeds that was triggered was from your past virtue, your past morality, your past goodness, your past non-harming, non-killing, and as Amazoki puts it, probably practiced in the past in the context of a spiritual practice. So this very powerful virtuous karmic seed was programmed, was triggered already before you even stopped breathing, a few weeks before you came to Jackie's mother's fallopian tube. And that already programmed you to go to Jackie's mother's fallopian tube. What's your mummy's name?
Claire.
Let's get personal here. Okay, so there's Claire. What's your daddy's name?
George.
So Claire and George, we presume you got conceived in the old-fashioned way, not in a petri dish, right? Is that true? Okay, because mummy and daddy hopped into bed or hopped wherever they hopped, isn't it? And this is weeks. I know, it just sounds ridiculous, but it's good to make it personal. I like it. It's not just intellectual then. So there's George and Claire, okay? A few weeks before that, they probably maybe they hadn't even met each other by then. Doesn't matter, they might have in your case. But this consciousness, this continuity of mental moments was tracked back and it was in another body. Say it was in Fred's body. Maybe in Australia, who knows? Maybe you're a Tibetan monk, who knows? But it was in another body. And so at the time of death, and if we've got time today or tomorrow, we'll go into a bit more detail about the death process because it's really helpful to understand it. This is a really huge thing for Buddhists. This is why it's so important to help people at the time of death. Because before you stop breathing, this process starts, and the way you are at the time of death determines the karmic seeds that are triggered. And given that every millisecond of whatever we think and do and say gets dropped into our karmic bank vaults, nothing goes astray. We've all got trillions of them here, using this analogy of seeds, okay? Trillions of karmic seeds. So, like a miracle, if you like, one of your very powerful, virtuous ones was triggered at the time of your death. And in general, we can deduce you must have died fairly peacefully. Because when your mind's calm and peaceful, which is why we need to be helped at the time of death, that can help trigger your good karmic seeds. If you're having a panic attack and freaking out and fear, which is so not uncommon, this can trigger one of your negative karmic seeds in one of your other bank vaults. From killing and harming and lying and stealing. Look at the universe. And we're talking animals as well here, because we're not human in our nature. You could have been an animal in the past as well. And we'll talk about that and try and explain it later. So, okay, the first one was triggered was the seed that would determine you can become a human. Like you won the lottery. I mean, there's probably 7 billion mosquitoes in one evening out there. And there's 7 billion entire humans, so it's clearly harder to get a human body, isn't it? So you kind of won the lottery, but use your own virtue. You get the body. Second, the same time has triggered all the karmic seeds from the next bank vault that will produce Jackie's personality, all her tendencies, all her personality traits. And this is the big shock, because we just naturally assume they come from mum and dad, but they haven't even jumped into bed yet. Claire and George haven't even thought about you yet. These are your tendencies. This is why it's such an interesting concept. Do you understand? All your personality traits, and if you started writing them down, we'd have hundreds, wouldn't we? Thousands. Whether they're in terms of intellectual, creative, or emotional. It's all the same. They're all your tendencies. And we're all somewhere between Mother Teresa and Hitler, aren't we? You get my point? You understand? Somewhere in that spectrum. You understand? This is the second way that your karmic actions in the past will ripen as a bunch of tendencies. And they're like the residual results of the main action. So they're the habit to keep doing them. So it's very evident. You practice piano for 10 years, you're not surprised you turn into a good musician. That's really these tendencies, and that means you've practiced them before. They're your tendencies. The next lot, the next bank vault that's triggered, and this gets to your mum and dad now, is the way, the way we're somehow, how we are in our life in terms of how people treat us and see us. Okay? So we can see in our life very simply, if you want to think of your whole life up to now, you can divide all your experiences into the bad things that have happened in relation to other people and the good things. Speaking simply, would you agree with that? It's a really simple way to put it, wouldn't you, Jackie?
Absolutely.
Some people are mean to you and some people are kind to you, and often can be the same person. We get that. So these are called experiences similar to the cause. This second one are the tendencies similar to the cause. You're having done them before. These are the experiences similar to the cause of your having done them before, but now they happen to you. But this includes all the good things. We often only think of karma in terms of bad things. It's kind of weird. Every good thing that anyone has ever done, someone believes your words. Honey, that's not accidental. It's because you've spoken the truth before, and that habit is triggered in someone, and karma's personal as well. So this determines, so the next one is determining the kind of body you have. So mum and dad give you the egg and sperm, there's no question. But the fourth one is called environmental karma, and this is the very way the physical world impacts upon you. So let's say you get sick all the time and food you eat poisons you and you're allergic to this one, you nearly die if you eat a peanut and the air is polluted. That's all the external conditions. And the Buddha would say due to your own negative karma, in this case negative karma, the body you're born into, mummy has a tendency to get cancer. There's the genes to get this other disease. The physical world impacts upon you, harms you. That's so, even though they give you the body you get, the quality of it, and where you're born, and the impact of the environment, that's due to your past karma too. Do you understand what I'm saying? So these are working intricately together. So these are the four ways your karma ripens. If you think of your life, there's you who is a human. Then you've got your tendencies inside your human mind. Then you've got your experiences in relation to sentient beings. And let's face it, that since we're conceived, we've been bumping into sentient beings. The rats, the cockroaches, your shit in your kitchen drawer, the people who are kind to you, your pets, your mummy, your next door neighbour, the mean person, the ex-husband. You understand? Since we're born, we're very social beings. And all this is not accidental. This is due to past history with each other. And even the way the physical world impacts upon you. So, using the example of, like I mentioned this with John, but John's not here today. Where's John? He's not here.
Oh, he's not here.
That's fine. So, I use the example of John, I think, that one example of one action conscious, intentional, non-killing. So let's just say you one day see a mouse and you have compassion and you make sure you don't want to kill it, you save it and you chuck it out the door. That's a complete action of intentional non-killing, a very powerful action, motivated by compassion, right? That gets programmed in your mind. One of those seeds is what causes you to get a human body. Because that compassion, the saving of a being's life, even if it's a mouse motivated by strong compassion, that's a very tasty action, you know. So that karmic action of non-killing, any of the four results would be this. First, you get a human body. Second, you'd have a tendency not to kill, which is pretty rare on this planet. Most humans kill something. Most religions even say it's cool to kill. Do you agree with this? It's interesting. I mean, I was taught as a Catholic, and I love my Catholic upbringing. I'm really not criticizing. But God made animals and creatures especially for the benefit of humans. They don't have souls. Buddha's view is very, very different. Do you understand? So that to have the tendency to not kill, that would be incredible. That's the fruit of your habit to not kill. The third result of non-killing is you okay, this is applying to you. You know, you're still alive, not dead yet, and you won't die young, and you don't get killed by others. Well, so far so good for Jackie, isn't it? She's not 20 anymore. You're getting closer to old as opposed to young, right, Jackie? Unless my eyes deceive me. Join the club, baby. Do you understand?
You're younger.
Oh, am I really? Okay. You were born in 43, were you?
43.
What year? 43.
Pardon me?
What year were you born?
1943.
Oh, yeah, I'm born in 44. Okay, so you were born. Your Claire and George got together before my Billy and Teddy. My mum and Teddy. Maybe we were two monks in Tibet, and you died a year before, and you ran to American mummy, and I ran to an Australian mummy. Who knows? So the fourth way, your karma's ripening, non-killing, is whatever you eat, it'll nourish you. You live in a good environment. The air's tasty, the water's tasty, the food is delicious. And I would suggest if you live here, that's true. So all of this is due to your past non-killing. So that's why your body is affected, how you live, whether your life is long or short, the environment you live in, how people impact upon you, and your own tendencies. All of this, the fruit of your past actions.
And the anger, where does this come from?
Well, that's habit. That's the second kind of karma. A habit, darling. It's a habit. Everything is, I mean, maybe you're like me when you're a little girl. Mummy didn't teach you how to get angry. You knew how to do it, right? Join the club. I did too. So that means we got born with a habit to be angry because we practiced it before. It's hardly rocket science. Get my point? And this is why the deeper habits are a lot harder to change, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
I'm still working on it. You too, Jackie? Or you just pretending? You're just giving an example, were you? But the interesting point here is, the point that's kind of just to contemplate when we hear these words. This is one viewpoint. And let's say we've never heard this before. Let's say, what's your name? The lady in the yellow. The lovely yellow dress. Elizabeth. Let's say Liz has never heard this before. She might have, she might not, I don't know. Let's say she hasn't. It's like a shock to us. You mean I created myself? My God, we can't even get our head around it, you know, because it's so shockingly different from the view that God made us. And of course, unless you're really rude, you don't want to blame God, do you? That's not cool, is it? But we love to blame Mummy and Daddy. And that's our philosophical view. So we naturally assume my mother and father, that's why I'm sick, because they've got the bad genes, you know. So we have a tendency, because we think I'm the product of someone else, that implies blame. You've got to point to where did it go wrong, what happened. So that's of course why we blame Mummy and Daddy. Is it not true? It's very instinctive, isn't it? And that's the view that we reinforce in our modern world, you know.
I had a question.
Yeah, hang on, yeah, go.
Does the Buddhist view also be consciousness?
Yeah.
Does it have does it have the ability to make choices?
Well, darling, why are we sitting in this room and why bother if we can't? No, I'm not being sarcastic.
No, as far as make choices to where the next soul is.
Oh, okay. When you're very highly realized and you're in charge of the process, like all these meditators in the tradition we're describing, the whole point is to get complete control over your mind with using single point of concentration, and then you learn all these techniques that would enable you to be in total control, and then you die when you're ready, and you choose your next rebirth. You go, you know exactly where you're going. Well, do you remember? No. Only if you're highly. Do you remember choosing?
No.
Then wait. Therefore, you didn't choose. You you'd know, if you're a highly realized practitioner, you would have been in control of your past death, you would have known exactly you wanted to get reborn, and you would choose it. So if you don't remember it, that means you didn't choose it. Because you would never forget if you did, because you'd be highly realized. Are you with me?
Yeah.
So we're capable eventually of doing this, of course we are. But the point here is there's no choice involved. But due to the actions we've done in the past, and that would be the conscious part, conscious, intentional, non-killing, non-stealing, non-harming, that's how we come and get a human body. And if you look into your mind and you see any tendencies that are good in your mind, that's because you practice them. So even though you don't really literally have chosen, but by your past actions, you have created the cause, this life, to have a human life, to have good qualities, to want to be a spiritual practitioner. So that's due to your past actions. But remembering them was another whole level of realization. That eventually we can do. Are you with me?
Yes, may I follow up with
Of course
one
you may.
question?
Yes.
So if someone, your life, let's, can I make it personal for a minute?
As you wish.
Is that okay?
As you wish.
I have a sister who suffered her entire life with
Yes.
a very bad mental illness.
Yes.
And she passed away a few years ago.
Yes.
And she was 60 years old. And my belief was that her consciousness chose this life
Okay.
for whatever reason, this
I understand.
suffering that she endured. And it was okay because her life before that consciousness that brought her here
Yes.
chose that, and for
Mhm.
the experience, and therefore she was no longer a victim. She
I
was in charge
understand.
of
No,
her
I understand.
consciousness.
No, I put it this way. That is absolutely, that's completely possible in Buddha's view. But so you can say you think it was like that, unless you're certain. But it's not to think that. But it doesn't always follow. It might be true.
It
But there's, yeah, of course. But there's no question. So this is the general idea then, in the Buddhist view. Okay, this gets us to understand why even having suffering. You understand? So then what do we mean by suffering? This is the simplest level. When we started on Thursday, we began the first level of suffering. Remember the first noble truth? There is suffering, and there's the first level. There's a second and third. I'm going to go into today. So the first level of suffering, the Four Noble Truths, Buddha's first teaching. There is suffering, there are causes, you can get rid of it, and how to do it. It's very practical, okay? So the first level, there's 3 levels of suffering for the way Buddha talks. And the first one is the one we all understand. It's when the bad things happen. When you suffering, problems, difficulty, health, you understand. Husband leaves you, whatever. People abuse us, people don't harm us, people harm us, people don't trust us. That's what we mean by suffering, and that's the first level for the Buddha. So, okay, using your sister as an example, then let's just forget whether she chose. Let's say if she is a highly realized practitioner, she could be in control, and she could indeed consciously choose to be born in a very difficult situation, because that would clean up, that would finish that karma and would give her an incredible level of practice. Do you understand? That's you're right. I'll say more about that in a minute. But the general point I want to make is this. If they use the analogy of seeds and fruits, if every moment of what we call happiness in this life, which speaking simply means when the good things happen, when what I want happens, nice people, nice friends, people believe my words, pleasant health, lovely food, very simple. If that's what we simply call happiness, well, the Buddha view is, it's not just good luck, it's every one of those moments is the fruit of past seeds of virtuous karma, positive karma, non-harming, non-killing, non-stealing, very conscious. So necessarily that every moment we call suffering is the fruit of the opposite. It's the fruit of negative karma. Do you understand? So when a person is an ordinary person like you, and less or like me and like you could be a highly realized being too. Let's say a regular person who's not in control of the process, and you have suffering, it's the fruit of your own bad actions. So when you realize that, you don't get guilty, you know it's not punishment, you know it's the fruit of your own actions, out of your own ignorance before, you didn't realize you're setting yourself up for future suffering. Then you take responsibility for it, and then when you're really developing your practice, you greet the bad things, because you know that fruit is now finished. I remember doing a talk, and equally with the happiness, every time you have a moment of happiness, you delight, that's the fruit of your own past practice as well. Do you understand? I'll get to your thing in a minute. So I remember this one time it was in Miami, years ago, 20 years ago. I did a conference, and the topic was why do bad things happen to good people. It was me, a rabbi, a Lutheran, and a Catholic. Well, I didn't understand the Lutheran and the Catholic answers, I'm sorry, I just didn't understand them. But the rabbi, when I talked about karma, it was easy for me, I went blah blah about karma, the rabbi clapped. I was very surprised. And he said, we agree, we have the same view. Some very traditional Jews will say there's a load of rubbish, this view, but this guy, he's a rabbi, he said he was a Kabbalah rabbi. And he said they have the view of karma and reincarnation. I think the Jews in the audience were shocked. And he said, we have the same. Every time something bad happens, you think, great, one less debt to repay. So it's sort of like, you know, if you've eaten bad food for 20 years, you're going to be overweight and get sick, right? So every time you start going on a diet, you're cleaning it up, so you're happy, aren't you? And even if you get extra kind of burps and farts and things, you know it's all a good sign of your purification practice, isn't it? Well, having suffering like, and recognizing that suffering is the fruit of your negative karma, you delight when it happens because you're getting rid of it. So a person who's highly realized, who's in charge of the process, who's really a very developed practitioner, who really is in charge, who knows exactly what they're doing, who wants to do masses of purification quickly so they can become a Sangha as quick as possible, do you understand? They will choose a very difficult life so they can clean up their act and so they can give opportunity to other people, like the parents, to create virtue. Do you understand? Do you understand the general thinking? Yeah. So that's very possible. You had a question.
Oh, yeah, it ties in actually.
Go on.
So if you consciously go through your difficulties in your life,
Yes.
are you healing those around you and the parents that brought you in? I think the answer is yes.
Yes, very same, very same. That's a very powerful level. I mean, in terms of people choosing a rebirth, that's possible, but only at the highest level of realization. But the point is, if we don't have that memory, we're not that advanced yet, then to take the suffering in our life and see it as purification, that's a really powerful way to live our life. But that's a more advanced level. We've got to get the most basic level first. That's a really advanced level, and then you really can grow quickly.
And help others.
And
Those
help others. Oh
around
my
you
God,
that
yes, of
you're
course, help
connected
others.
to. Everyone.
But this implies already a lot of work on the wisdom wing, which we want to go back to the basics. That's a really more advanced level on the compassion wing. Because look at most of the way we are in the world. Nobody greets their suffering with a happy mind. It's very unusual to do that, isn't it? In the general world, we blame, we feel like a victim, we're resentful, we're bitter, it's not fair, how dare, I didn't ask to get born, it's not my fault. That's how we suffer so badly, isn't it? So to get beyond that, in the Buddhist view, by understanding karma, what's happening? People a bit chilly. Shall we turn it down or something?
Oh, no.
You okay?
No.
All right. Well, she's right underneath. Is that the vent?
Oh, good.
No wonder.
She just warmed me
I'm
up.
just dressing her.
But I mean, is that the AC up there?
Yeah, that's it.
Well, you should move, sweetie pie.
I'm warm now. I'm hot all of a sudden.
Okay. Okay. Liz, I'm sorry. Okay. So the very first. This is the very first step, and that's why using the botany analogy is a really good one. You know, if you're a really advanced gardener, you can use poison as medicine, can't you? But if you're just a beginning gardener, you'll die if you eat the poison. You've got to first know what the hell is poison and what is good. So the first level of understanding this practice is you've got to identify what is a negative action and what results will it bring. So you stop doing it. That's junior school grade level practice. In the more advanced levels, you greet the problem. In fact, even they say the body suffers, this Sanskrit word for the beings who we would call saints, I think, who are really highly realized beings. They would rather live with a person that is mean to them. They're not masochists, but because they understand that that's their level of practice. For me, it's a bit like I always think of Lance Armstrong. I know he's a naughty man now, but I know when he was a good boy and he was this fanatic. I was really used to admire when he has this incredible enthusiasm. So for Lance Armstrongs of the world, they don't want to just relax and go downhill. They don't want to coast. They want the toughest mountains possible. Do you get my point? That's the analogy. So when you're really a great practitioner, you'll greet the problems, and that's a powerful level. But to do that, you've got to already know what is a negative, what is a positive, the nuts and bolts of the basic levels of practice, and that's pretty intense. Are we communicating here? Yes, sweetheart.
Thank you, Venerable. When I was 34, I lived in New York, I contracted 2, quote, terminal illnesses.
Okay, so then the
Very,
question.
very sick
Right.
for years.
And the question?
The question was, at that time, I was very vocal because I thought, well, if this happens to me, there has to be others. So I was vocal to help others.
So what's the question?
Okay, now the question was,
Is now. What's the question now?
the question was related to, well,
Is,
I
you
think
mean the question
is-
now? You have a question now
question now
about that?
is
Okay, good.
about
What is the
that.
question?
Oh, okay, is that my understanding with karma and other
Yeah, what's the
people-
question, darling?
Okay, the question
That's a
is,
statement. I want a
okay,
question.
when other people are dying, okay, when others are dying or have
Sick and
died.
everything. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, good.
From my understanding,
I want the question. I need the
Is it-
question, Lava. It really helps. No. This is not me being a bully.
No, I
It's
know.
powerful to phrase it as a question.
okay, is it correct?
Thank you.
Okay, is it correct that although I'm a Buddhist and I have my beliefs, okay, the person who is dying who might not be a Buddhist, okay, to make a drama or scenario about whether they're going to
I'm
heaven
lost
or
completely. I'm
hell,
completely lost.
because
What's the question?
It's too scrambled.
Okay, so I think it's because you're thinking of the story. But if you get to the question, maybe wait, think about it, and come back later. You just have a question.
Yeah.
Just so that we'll come to it eventually. Let it just be for now. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Are we having a tea break or are we going straight to lunch break?
Straight to lunch.
Or are we?
10 minutes.
Oh my God, for lunch already. Good Lord, okay. I've got to be quick. What time do we finish today?
4.
Oh,
So
we've got no time to waste at all.
12:30 to 1.
Oh my God, no time left at all. I better talk much quicker. Okay. So summary here. Our consciousness or our mind, and these words are used synonymously, are not physical. There's this river of mental moments. They even have the term mental continuum in Buddhism. First point. Second, it did not begin in our mummy's womb. This is a fundamental point. The whole of Buddhism as an intricate worldview would collapse into a heap of utter absurdity if this were not true. So I'm not forcing you to believe it or not believe it, but we're taking this as our hypothesis here. Okay. So this consciousness goes back and back and back. First general point. Second general point, every millisecond of what goes on in that consciousness, everything we think and do and say, is part of the process of quote-unquote creating karma. The word karma means action. Karma, action in Sanskrit. But it's implying first intention, mental action. So the process of karma starts with the mind. But our trouble is, because of ancient past practices of so many things, we come into this world programmed with what we call instinct. Whether you're a monkey, like there's a certain kind of monkey or a chimp I heard about recently, that the moment it's born, little boy turns around and has sex with his mummy. Then he has sex with his sister and his auntie and his grandpa, grandma, uncle, enemy, friend, stranger. They really like sex. So you can say he's practiced sexual activity. Very strong habit. Get born as a monkey into a family of beings who've got that tendency. So that's a habit. So no one would say that mummy taught him to know how to have sex. So that's what we call instinct. And Buddha would call instinct habit. So that's why it's a really powerful concept. We know we come into this life. Like Jackie and I agreed, our mummies didn't teach us to be angry. We knew how. Because that means we had a tendency to be angry. We all can see with all babies. Children, as they try to grow up, some naturally lie, steal, are harmful. It's not being depressing. We recognise it. But because we think they're blank slates and somehow then the parents are the blame, or we try to find what their brain is doing, we can't find why Hitler's mummy, Austrian housewife, she didn't have time to teach him all that stuff. It would be ridiculous. He came programmed with ancient habits. So that's instinct. That's what instinct is. And anything that you do often enough, think about it. If you learn piano often enough, you will play piano instinctively. Well, it's not rocket science. You know at some point you couldn't even play one note. But by practicing it, it makes perfect. That's instinct. But the Buddha's saying we bring it from the past, which is an interesting concept. Not from mummy's and daddy's past. Our own. We come programmed with our own habits. The stronger the habit, the more natural it is. Like I told you, the other example, little boy, you know, who's 3 years old, his mother taking the lice out of his head, and he's crying with compassion for the lice. She hadn't taught him this. That's his instinct. Guess what? From practicing non-killing and compassion. It's hardly rocket science. That's why for me, this is a hypothesis. A continuity of consciousness is a pretty good proposition, you know. Otherwise, you blame God or you blame mummy. There's only two options. I'd rather put it onto me, thank you. No, I'm the boss, so that's why I've got a good quality. Thank you, I'm owning it. Then I can own the rubbish easily, it's no problem. Instinct is just the habit of doing something that often that you do it second nature. That's all. That's the Buddhist idea. So we come into this, I say, how fortunate we are. Look at us. The fact that we're sitting in this room. We might become a Buddhist, I don't care. The fact that we even thought about wanting to learn about how to become a better human being. On this maniac planet, this is so incredible. You should be weeping with tears of happiness for your own virtue. That's because you've got the habit. You've done it before, you know. It's not random. We think it's just all random, good luck and bad luck. The Buddha says no, it's a natural law. And if there's a law, there can't be random. There can't be good luck. You don't have a flower by good luck. You know there's a seed there. And our life is our life is our garden. I like that analogy. And everything's in it. You put it there, baby. So own the lot, but the good as well. I said before, but that scientist is the only person who's ever asked that question. Well, nobody has ever asked me this question. Nobody, ever. I say it often enough, and still nobody asks it. Robina, why do good things happen? Get my point. Everybody asks why bad things happen. I've never yet had any example of anybody asking questions about karma that isn't about the suffering side. You get my point? In other words, I've never had a person yet say to me, Robina, that little girl, who has a beautiful mother and a beautiful father and money in the bank and good health and lovely friends and good education, you mean they deserve it? You get my point? I've never had a person, because we love negativity. We run like maniacs to the miserable. It's kind of fascinating to me. And we only think karma refers to the bad things. It's a very bizarre concept, you've got to admit. Do you understand my point? It's utterly fascinating. But we take the good for granted. This is shocking.
Or could it be that we're just afraid of the awesomeness of...
No, that sounds too grand and noble. Nobody's afraid... excuse me. No, dear. Because the irony of ego is we run to misery. And we have blame and anger and guilt. It's sort of the irony of ego. These are the things we very strongly go to. It's very fascinating. Very fascinating. I mean, seeing the awesomeness of something, that's virtue. That's not even ego. That's powerful. That's marvelous. And it's only the person who goes beyond the mere negativity and has some courage and confidence can even talk like that. So marvelous. You must have done some practice. Well done, girl. Are we communicating here?
Yes.
Is that a question about to come up? It looks like it. Questions kind of stirring up from the belly to the throat to the mouth. The body language expressed it. What's the
I
question?
just had a thought
Good, go on then.
where I'm just still not clear on
Yeah.
if somebody is born healthy
Yeah.
and then they develop a disease
Yes.
in life.
Yes.
You said before that was purposely done because they want to
Not
clear?
no. Okay, I say things way too quickly. What's your point? What's your name, sweetheart, here?
Oh, Joni.
Joni's point. She asked the question, and I was saying, yes, that is a possibility. There can be some very highly realized practitioners who are really developed in this path we're describing, who are very powerful, who have clairvoyance, who practice many lifetimes, who want to become a Buddha as quickly as possible. They're on the compassion wing, they're really advanced, and they've got to the point where they can choose to be reborn, not just get reborn randomly like we do due to karma. They decide that they want to get born. They've got certain karma with a mummy and daddy, and they're born to a body that's really physically sick or mentally sick. They can choose that as part of their process to become a highly evolved being. Normally, that's not the way 99% of us don't choose. We just, due to our past actions, we're born and get ill health or good health for that matter. Are you seeing the point I'm making?
I do.
Good.
So can they choose to, and I know the animals are on the lower rim, but how does one be born into an animal's body or an animal
I understand
into
that,
a
okay,
human
good.
body?
All right, good, okay. I can try and discuss before lunch. No, that's it, might be a bit quick. 3 minutes to go. In fact, lunch has already passed. It's 31 already. So, can we just check? Okay, how much time have we got?
A few minutes.
It's sort of there waiting or nearly waiting. I can start the conversation now and then we can pick it up after lunch, okay? All right. So, okay, the Buddha's view, big picture again, is that there are trillions upon trillions upon trillions of mental continuums, of mind streams, of beginningless and endless consciousnesses. A tiny percentage is human. Like 7 billion humans is like the miniature 0.00001% of all those sentient beings. Okay, first point. We can see there are a lot more creatures, bugs, mosquitoes, fish, than humans. Would you agree? Or the animal realm. And we couldn't probably count them, could we? Every one of those beings is exactly the same as a human being insofar as being a sentient being. But due to their karma, their past actions, their mind went to a mosquito egg, or a rat body, a rat mummy, or a whale mummy, or a rat. You understand? That's due to their karma. That triggered was that their type of death was negative karma in their first main one from past negative actions. That gets the instead of Jackie's case, a very strong, virtuous, intentional, non-killing karmic seed was triggered that caused her to go to Claire's womb. The case of your dog in the backyard, Jackie's dog in the backyard, you know, the consciousness that goes into her womb, and when she has sex with her little mummy, you know, daddy dog, is another being, could have been a human, but when they died, one of their negative seeds, negative karma from strong killing, might have been triggered, and that programmed their consciousness to go to the dog womb. It's like that. So basically, then to get clear about this, we have to understand what is a negative action and what is a positive action, because they're the crucial things to understand, because the so-called negative action is what ripens as suffering. So in the same way that non-killing, in the 4 ways for Jackie, non-killing, her strong non-killing karma was triggered that caused her to get a human body. Strong non-killing karma, let's say, causes her to have an imprint not to kill. Her strong non-killing karma causes her to be not killed and not dying yet. And her strong non-killing karma is causing her to have reasonable health and live in a good environment. Speaking very simply. Equally, killing karma, you get born as a dog, let's say a dog, or others, and there are many other types of beings as well that we can't see. They're called hell beings, they're called spirits. There's many kinds, the Buddha would say. And they're all sentient beings like you and me, and they're all experiencing the fruits of their past actions. It's not punishment, it's not reward, because there's no one running the show. We are all experiencing the fruits of our past actions. So the dog, let's say, or a lion, let's say a lion. So due to negative karma, Fred, who spent his life maybe being a fisherman or killing the mosquitoes, you don't have to be a Hitler to be born as an animal. We think only if you're really evil you might have a suffering rebirth, and then we wouldn't think animals because we think they're nice. And they are nice. But let's say due to the habit of killing karma, the main one, your mind would rub to the lion mummy's womb. Second, in that lion mind, strong tendency to kill. Mummy lions are the killers, aren't they? They're really programmed instinctively, and they're brilliant at it. That's due to past killing. Not to mention their other tendencies, you know. The third result of killing for the lion, will she get eaten by even a bigger lion? And the fourth one, maybe she lives in a zoo, a lousy environment. Are you with me? So every sentient being's got an environment. Fish, mosquitoes, bugs in the ground. We've all got an environment. That's due to our past actions, the way it manifests. Sentient beings, how they harm us and not harm us, and help us and not help us. Our tendencies and our own actual body. This is simple principles, but it's described in immense detail in all the texts. It describes how this can happen, the way the whole worldview according to Buddhism functions.
So if they're a nice dog or a nice tiger...
That means you got born as a dog, but you've got a really nice personality, and dogs often have. They're born to nice people, they're cute, they're sweet, you know, they don't harm others, they wag their tails, they help people. Yeah, you can be born as a dog due to negative karma, but have a fairly nice personality, but you'll still be profoundly ignorant. You have a profoundly ignorant mind.
But can you be reborn as a human?
Honey, we've been animals countless lifetimes, so there's the answer.
So we can.
We've all been in these countless lifetimes, all of us. So like a miracle, you could even argue that's why to help animals, and I'm really, she's gone. No, I understand, but I'm really encouraging. Like at the moment, we're going to talk about it this afternoon. I'm working with Nicole, who's the director of the centre, trying to grow the programs here. I think you have 3 programs a week, you know. And I said to Nicole, if you were a restaurant and you only offered 3 meals a week, you wouldn't be surprised you'd have no customers, right? Well, there she is. There's Nicole. She's the boss. Maybe she doesn't realise she's the boss, but she is the boss. Now she's slowly dawning on that she's the mummy of the centre. And we worked out, haven't we, with Cecilia, where's this? Oh, she's not here. Trying to show that you've got all the resources we'll discuss this today. Anyway, getting to the point. Animals, things about animals, how to help your dog. So if you have a dog, let's say, first, due to a very strong history, you've got a karmic connection with that creature, that mind. It could have been your mother 14 lives ago, you know, something. But due to its karma, it gets born where you pick it up at the dog home. How miraculous, that dog due to its own... So it's born as a dog due to its own stupid negative karma. And it's not being mean about dogs. This is a shocking thing to hear this, but I'm going to tell you. Lama Zopa said... So Lama Zopa is my teacher, and he's said to be one of these people who has control over this whole process, these highly evolved beings. He said to be that. You know, I can't prove it, but that's he's said to be. That means he's got clairvoyance. I'll discuss all this later. So he said one time, if we could just for a moment have a direct experience of the mind of our little dog, their mental suffering would be so overwhelming, we could never wish to waste another millisecond of our precious human life. That's a shock to us, because we look at a dog, we think they're cute, we don't think they're suffering. And this is where we have to understand the Buddhist model of the mind in more detail, which I'll talk about after lunch, the way these states of mind function. Do you understand? I'll go into it in more detail. So you're born as a dog due to negative karma, but you've got good karma in terms of maybe you're not going to eat, like a lion rips the guts out of a buffalo every morning because she needs a breakfast, and that's her habit. She has no choice, you know. You tell her the buffalo doesn't like it, she can't hear it, okay? So the little doggy doesn't do that because you provide it with, canned food. How lucky for the dog. But if she's hungry, she'd rip the guts out of that cat for sure. We would, if we were that hungry too. Look at us, we eat each other. So this third karma she's got is the main one. She's got very good experiences similar to the cause. Due to her own past virtue and kindness, she's got a lovely mummy, she gets fed every day, she lives in a comfy house, she doesn't have to survive on the streets and go crazy. That's due to her own virtue. And then even her environment the same. So she's got good environmental karma, good experiences similar to the cause karma, not so many good tendencies, the poor thing. She's a bit stupid, but that's not being mean. But she's actually got a dog birth. So each of the four tracks of karma refer to all of us. And sometimes they can be good, sometimes they can be bad together. Are you with me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So, the question of why do bad things happen to good people, you can equally ask why do good things happen to bad people. So you can have a tendency to steal. Or like, Mr. Trump. You might like Mr. Trump, and that's fine. I'm not criticising. But everybody says that Mr. Trump lies, okay? And it would seem fairly evident. Let's just say he does lie, but we can see that people don't care. Many people believe him. 50 million Americans follow him on Twitter. So they think he's fantastic. Even the evangelical Christians, they know he jumps on ladies and grabs them by the you-know-what. They don't care. They think he's a special gift from God to support their position. It's very fascinating. So they don't care what he does. So that's due to his very strong virtuous karma in the past. No matter what he does, some people like him. But Hillary just has to blink at somebody and they put her in prison, So you can say due to her past negative karma, no one wants to believe her words. You can say like that. Do you understand my point here? I'm not trying to talk politics, but get my point. Are we communicating? So bad things can happen to good people, and good things can happen to bad people. And the bad and good things is called experiences similar to the cause, and the good or the bad is your own tendencies. But they're two tracks of karma. But our assumption is, but if I'm speaking the truth, I must be believed. But we can see it's not true, Do you understand? It's very interesting. So getting these four clear, even if you're just think about karma and are interested in the Buddhist ideas, to get these four ways that karma right, it's clear, really helps you interpret your life much better. Instead of all the victim mentality, it's not fair, why do these things happen to me? We're like babies, It's really helpful. Just these four tracks. You understand, people? And then we can have lunch. We'll go into this in more detail.
Thank you.
Ready for lunch?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, we haven't got much time, so in an hour's plenty. Till 1, yeah. So then, just let me... you don't have to stay for lunch. You can go out if you want to. No one says you have to. You're not imprisoned here, okay? The front door's open. So what I'm suggesting, if you do, it'd be fantastic. And what I'd like you to do, talk about the weather, talk about Mr. Trump, whatever you like. But it'd be really nice to use some part of the hour to take one or two of the pieces we've talked about and chew it over, along with your food. Discuss it, and then come up with questions at the end. And it'd be nice if you could focus on that. You don't have to, but it'd be really great. I always quote this when I studied very much at the beginning with my philosophy teacher, Buddhism. He'd always say, in the monasteries, they always say, 25% of what you get comes from listening. 75% comes from discussion, they call it debate, discussion, analysis, and thinking things through. Do you understand? And analysing it and meditating on it. That's really powerful. So even a little bit of discussion can help clarify things, I'd recommend to do that. If you don't want to, that's fine. Okay?
Yes, thank you.
So I'll see you in an hour. Thank you, sweethearts. Yeah.